Okay, it looks like we're live everywhere. How's it going, you guys? Getting ready for Mountain Gnosis events. We have clients arriving in a few days. Really excited about this stuff. We're going to, of course, I'm going to try it first, but black ayahuasca I have not yet consumed. Not to my knowledge, anyways. It's entirely possible that, when I drank with Kofan, and I could not even speak to anyone. It very well could have been black ayahuasca, but it's also known as ayahuasca treño, or thunder ayahuasca, and it has a lot of mixed opinions. One of those opinions being that only black magicians and dark magic people work with it. Somebody actually told me that only really fucked up people drink black ayahuasca. The first time I ever heard of it. And it's actually botanically different species than Banisteriopsis copy. I don't. It's a. I'm not recalling the Latin name, but black ayahuasca is not Banisteriopsis copy, but it has the flower pattern. Oh man, I should have had. Hey Enrica, will you bring me a piece of black ayahuasca? If you know where it is, I'll show you guys what it looks like. Anyways, it's supposed to have much better visuals, I guess, like much more clear and more layered, deeper. And then I have been forced to work with chacruna for a while, which is not a terrible fate. But I prefer chaliponga because that's how I learned, and that's my plant. So while we're on the subject, before we go deep into the subject of the mysteries and psychedelics and entheogens and light and consciousness and all of this wild stuff that is so fundamentally essential to our current predicament. Oh, thanks, buddy. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, so it's different, It's dark, much darker. The pattern's a little bit different. So anyways, I'll make a video when I prepare it, and then I'll, after I drink, and I'll let you guys know what I think of that. So I want to thank Angel G, Greg Fritz, Alpha Draconian, JDB, Tyra, Mika Kainu, Stavros, we thanked last time, but thanks again. And then Empress Taitu, welcome to the Illuminati. So, let me look at the chat here. There's some stuff there, the tri-specs. I've also read that black vine is also used to find what is lost. Alicia, yeah, thank you. It's Alicia Anissa Patella, which is weird. I don't know. It looks, it has the flower pattern inside. I wouldn't swallow that much Pedro. What? Oh, what's going on, Natural State? Yeah, I know it's not for black magic, which is, I've heard a few people say that. I think it's just because it's black. People just say stuff. Anyways, I have been kind of hung up for quite some time on how to deal with the information that I'm receiving, from the outside world. I don't have to interface with it very directly. I live in the middle of nowhere in a very traditional Quechua community high up in the Andes. I don't really even see a lot of white people, I probably hear Quechua spoken around me more than Spanish. And nobody cares. Nobody cares about this stuff. I was just on Twitter, and I saw that the number one trending thing on Twitter right now is Civil War. So, I had a conversation with a client last night about, just how do I keep myself motivated after, it's not that hard when your beautiful partner is always bringing you smoothies made out of exotic fruits. But, you see the degree to which people are non-player characters, that, it's not to dehumanize them. It's not even diminutive. necessarily. I would prefer that they were otherwise, but it's just a trait, really, because they love their families, they are afraid, they are brave at times. There are all sorts of things that are, emotional constituents of the human experience. But my, sad conclusion is basically that most people don't think beyond the parameters of what's necessary for them. They just don't. And that fact has been exploited by what Terence McKenna called the dominator culture forever, really. Once you can establish cultural boundaries, cultural parameters, thought boundaries, people will pretty happily inhabit whatever structure you have provided for them, as long as there's some structure there. And even if that structure turns out to be a prison, once they have integrated it as their ontological home, they'll kill you for trying to free them from it. Trust me. Trust me on that one. And so that was kind of the thing, how do you continue to motivate yourself to keep doing this if there's this utter futility? Beyond that, if you actually believe that, as I do, that opposites generate each other, that good and evil and these contrasts are not just necessary in order for us to know the opposites, but they literally generate each other. Like, how do you escape the existential despair of that hopelessness that comes from this hermetic knowledge and wisdom? And that gives me an opportunity to mention, one of the reasons why the mystery school teachings have always been so secret. It's not just about consolidating power. It's not about consolidating, it is, but it's not entirely about protecting the mysteries from the profane and the unworthy. But it's also about protecting society and people. Because, it's something like Nietzsche said about how if you stare too long into the abyss, it will stare back into you. For the common person, and that sounds derogatory, so maybe I should say, for the average proletariat worker, knowledge of the absolute is going to be paralyzing, and it's going to serve no purpose in their life except to make them more aware of their unfortunate position as a cog in a system. But to get back on track in terms of the answer to that, the compartmentalization, for one thing, you have to, in order to really expand your consciousness and deepen your understanding in such a way as to elevate yourself, to be able to share the perspective of the eye in the sky and then ride the spiral of divinity back down into your human shell. This is the trick. You have to be able to attain to these states and this understanding, and then compartmentalize again. This is what integration can be about. Again, there's no one size fits all approach to this to integration of psychedelic experiences, but this ability to reframe this higher understanding and contextualize it for our mundane life is the most difficult and also necessary task in the career or life of a mystic or a magician or shaman or the average person who is trying to access transcendental states in order to improve their experience of life, So hello, Celestial Art Time. Let's see. What in the tree-hugging world is going on here? Yeah, well, I have this saying that everybody wants to open their third eye, but nobody's learned to use the first two. And that's another issue with this process is that people oftentimes they think they're bypassing the necessity of using their first two eyes by opening the third eye. You know, it's an escapist thing, and that's not going to serve you in the long run. Trust me, I tried it once. What's up, Neil Dennis? Actually, I have something I want to read to you guys. I don't know if you let me go back to the video description actually, because I don't know if all you guys read that or any of you read it. So I'm going to preface this whole thing with that. I should have just come right out of the gates with this. And by the way, I only have until 7:30 because we're doing a patron-only voice chat in our Discord at 8. So if you are a patron at the $10 tier and higher, please do join us at the Illuminati round table. All right, here we go. Just a moment, guys. "12 viewers and only 4 likes, and one of them is my own. Come on, y'all. Okay. Democracy dodders, ferocious fascism, cackling communism, equally frauds, cavort crazily all over the globe. They are hemming us in. They are abortive births of the child, the new Aeon of Horus. Liberty stirs once more in the womb of time. Evolution makes its changes by anti-Socialistic ways. The abnormal man who foresees the trend of the times and adapts circumstances intelligently is laughed at, persecuted, often destroyed by the herd. But he and his heirs, when the crisis comes, are survivors. Above us today hangs a danger never yet paralleled in history. We suppress the individual in more and more ways. We think in terms of the herd. War no longer kills all. War no longer kills soldiers. It kills all indiscriminately. Every new measure of the most democratic and autocratic government is communistic in essence. It is always restriction. We are treated as imbecile children. Drug control, the Shops Act, the motoring laws. This is giving you an idea of how old this is now. Sunday suffocation, censorship. They won't trust us to cross the roads at will. Fascism is like communism and dishonest into the bargain. The dictators suppress all art, literature, theater, music, news that does not meet the requirements. Yet the world only moves by the light of genius. The herd will be destroyed in mass. The establishment of the law of thelema is the only way to preserve individual liberty and to assure the future of the race. In the words of the famous paradox of the Comte de Phoenix, the absolute rule of the state shall be a function of the absolute liberty of each individual will. 1909. 1909, he was talking about, cackling communism, fascism, democracy, dodders, all this stuff. People seem to think that the devolution of the modern era just began in the last 20 years or whatever. But the reality is, obviously, this has been cooking for quite a long time. And I think if you take all of the details from the book of the law at once, the Great War is mentioned in all capital letters 10 years before the World War I actually started, and I think it was 10 years after it started that it became to be called the Great War. The book said the new Aeon will begin when the world is soaked in blood by the Great War, and historians pretty much unanimously agree that the modern period begins when the first shots were fired in World War I or after the war. And then we have the collapse of democracy, the encroaching cackling of fascism, and the population control acknowledgement. The light society only moves by the light of genius. The herd will be destroyed in mass. And then what's the other one? Oh, and we will be using strange drugs to communicate with entities at this time. And I don't think I need to explain what that would be. And then we have also this reference to people becoming more epicene and bisexual. Epicene is gender fluid, non-binary. And so, you know, one of the things to take into consideration is that despite the aesthetic of Satanism and demonology and magic and sorcery and all of these things, in reality, Crowley stated many times, demons are not real in the way that the IRS is real, you know, in a way similar to that. These are ways to organize the vast spectrum of consciousness into manageable bits and pieces, and to integrate them, to manage them, to master them. This is the real objective of magic. And so when we look at these prophetical elements in the Book of the Law that are more convincing than Nostradamus or Edgar Cayce or any of the more well-known instances, that's why they're more well-known, because they're full of shit. You know, there's really nothing convincing that I've ever seen in Nostradamus or Edgar Cayce, really. But in the case of the Book of the Law, we have specific timelines, we have exact information, everything in there is happening exactly as it said it would. It's almost 100 years, which is what Crowley said it would be, about 100 years. And what I'm getting at, though, is when you subtract the woo from this, what do you have? And Crowley, and the other person I think that can lay claim in the modern era to the most seemingly prophetical, you know, the Fear Inoculum from Tool. The album was released 6 months before the pandemic or so, and the title track is about a pandemic that's making people hate and fear each other. That's the aftermath of it. And both Crowley and Maynard James Keenan have said that it's actually just a matter of the subconscious mind's ability to map patterns and extend them into the future. And so one of the reasons that I'm describing all of this is that, you know, I think it's inarticulably, speaking of being unable to articulate, inarticulably important that we have confidence in the process that is unfolding before us, behind us, and all around us. And there are obstacles. There are definitely obstacles. But we have the tools to find a way over, under, or around those obstacles without any shadow of a doubt, really. Or at least we have to ignore that shadow to an extent. The obvious truth of it, the inescapable reality of it, is almost overbearing. And for me, it's been one of the main sources of frustration and cynicism creeping up on me. You know, in my 40s, this is like one of your main enemies to overcome the demon of cynicism and to maintain the enthusiasm of youth, but tempered with wisdom. Gunpowder unconfined by science is just steam wasted in the void, or however not Alex, what the hell was that guy's name? You know, the sovereign commander of the southern jurisdiction of the United States in 1851, Albert Pike, that guy. Uh, And so, you know, as further proof, I offered this old prophetical document that I find to be really impressive. And so do skeptics, which is interesting. You know, we've never seen that before with any of these other supposedly prophetical writings. They just missed them outright. The Book of the Law, they're like, well, it's not conclusive. You know, like, well, no. And all of those reviews actually, it just hit me where they were saying this isn't conclusive, interesting but not conclusive type of reactions. That was 20 years ago. I don't know what they would say now. You know, probably like, okay, pretty much conclusive at this point. But there's so much more to it, you know, exploding all around us. A new level of consciousness, a new degree of dialogue with the light itself. One of the biggest blows to the Aeon of materialism, I guess we could call it. It's not even an Aeon, it's something much smaller than that, but this period of abject materialism. The realization that neurons have nothing to do with at least computational intelligence. Right? And then the argument can be made, well, maybe consciousness is separate from intelligence. But that doesn't seem likely, I don't think, to anyone. The only correlation of that type that could be made is that the inverse of that, which is that it seems to us that the more intelligent a creature is, the more conscious it is. I don't know why it is that no positive correlation has ever been made directly as, you know, intelligence itself, like the degree of intelligence creating that higher consciousness. You know, I mean, I don't hear much about this. But at any rate, you know, we now live in a new paradigm. And I think that's something that people are a little bit slow to really wrap their heads around. But it's absolutely factual. The old paradigm has died, and it has happened so fast that people like Professor Dave Explains, this guy, I'm still working on the video, but there's a moment where he scoffs at the idea that there's an electrical field that can cause changes, complex changes in proteins and enzymes sufficient to alter DNA or the evolution of an organism, and that's not true. And the research is 5 years old, you know, at least. Michael Levin has caused planariums, a species of flatworm, I think, to grow two heads by changing their, not changing, but giving them a, well, it changes something, changes their electromagnetic field, I guess. It's more complex than that. There are points where there are like electromagnetic nodes, and those are manipulated. But I remember he said that they didn't actually apply a shock to the worm itself. I don't know if he was just mentioning that in case anyone thought they were, you know, electroshocking these worms and being abusive to them. But I think more importantly, he's saying it only affected the field around them, and then their progeny is born with two heads. So, you know, partly I'm outlining this just to remind you guys that the fact that there isn't this, you know, consolidated ripple of acknowledgement in the mainstream, it really is because these people are trapped in their old paradigm. You know, I think in the depths of Professor Dave's soul, he is probably convinced and determined to maintain a cutting-edge understanding of the developments in science around him. Yet things are moving so fast that he is unable to adjust and process the information around him. I mean, this is the same thing as, a caveman being teleported into the future. And that might sound insane to say of Professor Dave, but it's true in the sense that it's going to take a certain type of mind to maintain the malleability, the ontological malleability, to adapt to the changing environment, and I think another issue that we're having is the ego of people, because there are so many elements to the emerging changes in our worldview that, I got personally laughed at. When I was a kid, I always thought that Lamarck, this makes more sense. He's at least partially right. Now, in order to avoid acknowledging it, they've changed it to, epigenetics, epigenetic changes, rather than Lamarckian evolution. That clearly there is some intelligence that is guiding these adaptive processes. To even believe, I was thinking about this earlier, smelling something, that qualia, that an organ that not only, you have to draw the air through to smell, and that's where your olfactory, isn't that smelling? Is that olfactory? I can't even remember. You know what I mean? That this just randomly happened, without any kind of fundamental intelligence that's intrinsically entwined in the system. It's just, and I think that's honestly part of the paradigm shift blocker, that people just it was so obvious that it really is getting slapped across the face or something worse. Really, it's humiliating to have to admit that everything they thought they knew was wrong, and to realize that just like the religious people that they despise, they have been blindly believing things within certain parameters that were dictated to them, not by experience, not by personal experiment, but by faith. And, once that veil of obscuration is voided, dissolved and removed, it's found to be flimsy and insignificant, and never had much substance to begin with. And then on the other hand, I think that this also represents a grave disappointment to the woo train people, the people that have gone off the trails on the woo-choo train, because we're not necessarily pulling the veil back and finding out that there's this magical reality that is not contingent upon mechanistic effects, or that things still have some fundamental substance to them, that if we experience something in this world, there's some way that it happened. Telepathy may be real. It is real. I know it's real. But it's not magic any more than turning on a light is magic. And the ability for indigenous people, for example, to communicate with plants in the rainforest has as its basis biophotons that allow interspecies communication at the level of DNA. So it's really a difficult and narrow conduit for people that are really embracing the truth of what is actually happening here. The intersection of spirit and science is exactly that. And I think, even a lot of people on, our side of the fence, we're kind of hoping for something more along the lines of unicorns and fairies than even the ability to recognize how these things happen scientifically. It feels like some sort of failure or insult. And so, it's I guess what I'm saying is that should help to explain the sort of slow-going momentum of this particular boat. Ego on all sides really is the main limiting factor. It is what is congesting the flow of this vital force of prana, chi, consciousness, whatever you want to call it. Really remarkable to me as well. I have personal difficulty with it. I really do, because so much of this, as a child, I thought, well, no, the cells have to be intelligent. They have to be, that. And then when I would say that to people, I'd get laughed at. I mean, it's just. And I do not think that I was some sort of child prodigy or genius. That's not. I mean, to be fair, according to all the tests and stuff I took in school, that's not maybe true. But, personally, I really honestly do think that all that has slowed down humanity from having a more holistic understanding of the universe that we inhabit is the indoctrination and the assumptions that are provided to us by the overlords. How did Timothy Leary put this? Oh my gosh. I know all you guys have probably heard that song. The Live Tool, where they have Timothy Leary question authority. I don't remember. All right, so I had another bit of Crowley that I found today that I wanted to read to you guys. I wish I was a little bit more computer literate, because I don't know how to make this bigger, and it's really small. But, for me, one of the most interesting things or the only interesting thing about Aleister Crowley is that, it's almost proof that he understood completely where we were going, why we were going there, what was wrong, and how to fix it, And it's just magical to look back and see that this is so clearly true. So this isn't my favorite either. There are two other poems that I think I might like better, but I just found this one today looking for the introduction to the Book of the Law. Thy feet in mire, thine head in murk. O man, how piteous thy plight. The doubts that daunt, the ills that irk, thou hast nor wit nor will to fight. How hope in heart or worth in work? No star in sight. Thy gods proved puppets of the priest. Truth, all's relation, science sighed. In bondage with thy brother beast, love tortured thee as love's hope died. And love's faith rotted, life no least, dim star descried. Thy cringing carrion cowered and crawled to find itself a chance-cast clod, whose pain was purposelessness, appalled that aimless accident thus trod. Its agony, that void skies sprawled on the vain sod. All souls eternally exist, each individual, ultimate, perfect. Each makes itself a mist of mind and flesh to celebrate with some twin mask their tender tryst, insatiate. Some drunkards, doting on the dream, despair that it should die, mistake themselves for their own shadow scheme. One star can summon them to wake. To self, star souls serene that gleam on life's calm lake. That shall end, never that began. All things endure because they are. Do what thou wilt, for every man and every woman is a star. Pan is not dead, he liveth. Pan, break down the bar. To man I come, the number of a man, my number, lion of light. I am the beast whose law is love, love under will, his royal right. Behold within and not above. one star in sight. And so there's one of the underlying themes there is this idea that there are guiding stars, that the stars are conscious beings, that they are intelligences. And if we look at the ancient Hermetic idea of as above, so below, and then, you know, physicists, they don't really have a consensus when we get down to the nitty-gritty details. Some people, unfortunately, right now, are really embracing anti-intellectualism and they like to point at these inconsistencies and sort of, how do you say, like, you know, dismiss science on the, like, throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? We have some disharmony here, lack of consensus. Everybody's wrong and this is dumb. That's that desire to believe in woo beyond reason and common sense. And so if we assume and take for granted that the description of particles that I have accepted and seems to be the consensus is that they are more like little bundled up spots. Like if you took a cloth and then wrap a rubber band around it and you have a little bundle. So it's a dense spot of electromagnetic energy. What electromagnetic energy actually is, no one seems to actually know. But that's the description. So on a larger scale, we have humans with a brain full of magnetite. So at the most fundamental level, where there's actual behavior and symmetry and order, and some sort of even possibly fundamental intelligence, because even though it is true that most physicists and no one really believes that consciousness collapses the wave. The leading theory now that has any resemblance to that is the Penrose-Hameroff-Ork theory, which they think that the collapse of the wave gives rise to consciousness, not the other way around. So the connection hasn't been completely removed. Point being, though, that at another order of magnitude, we have this spot of electromagnetic density where there's even higher order of, behavioral symmetry, I guess. You know, there's something capable of expressing order and cognition. And so if you assume that this tendency for symmetry to express where there are bundles of magnetic energy and that the density of that increases as we get to higher and higher scales, then nothing would be more conscious than a star. And that's pretty fucking cool, if nothing else. And this is something that I kind of came to understand on my own through my own processes maybe 20 years ago or so. And to hear people like Rupert Sheldrake talking about it now, I had that experience where I was compelled by a voice in my head to go do a solar ritual and later find out there was this huge solar storm, which, by the way, we have another opportunity like this coming up this weekend. It's supposed to be the biggest coronal ejection so far. So I definitely plan to be up in the Andes, drinking San Pedro and trying to communicate with the sun on Saturday or Sunday. Probably Sunday. Sunday, of course, Sunday. But he was talking about how that the sun does this in order to interface with the consciousness here on Earth. Another thing I wanted to mention is that this idea that gold is crystallized consciousness. The Inca called it the sweat of the sun god Inti, or the essence of the sun god. And similar ideas exist in all sorts of different cultures all over the planet, including but not least the alchemists of Europe. And so the alchemical gold, this substance that allegorically was a state of absolutely pure uncorruptible consciousness, and gold does not corrode. But what I'm getting at here is that there's this association with stars and gold, even amongst the Inca, that it came from the sun. And this illustration serves a couple of purposes. One of them is that the idea that there's a connection between consciousness and light and gold. And I think it was like 15 years ago or more recently, neutrino stars were observed colliding. Neutrino stars are 115 yards long, wide, whatever. And when they collide, I can't remember what it's like. It's just an absolutely astronomical amount of gold and other heavy elements is sprayed out into the universe, as if there was such an extreme density of consciousness in those stars that the heat of heat isn't even the right word. The fusion that occurred crystallized all of that consciousness and sprays it out all across the universe. I mean, tremendous force. Could be that it's just reading into coincidences, but I seriously doubt that. And then also, if the anecdotal evidence of colloidal gold and how it helps with cognition and mood and things that are related generally to the brain and consciousness, that would also seem to at least kind of circumstantially support this idea that, by the way, you guys, do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron. We have just finished degree 23, Chief of the Tabernacle, which is the first degree of the revelations of the mysteries of the Eleusinian mysteries. And next up, we're going to 24, which is Prince of the Tabernacle. And it has been tremendous to go through all this stuff. I read through it many years ago, but without I didn't have the eyes that I do now to spot a lot of the stuff. Really quite a tremendous work. And also, it helps to really communicate and illustrate the degree to which the mysteries and even Baal was just the sun, really. And that's one of the things we hit on today, that the demonization of Dionysus and all these things that happened at the Olympics, that were really the horse, the bull was a sign of strength and athleticism. I can't remember how the Christians interpreted it, like it was satanic somehow. The white horse was also a mythical Greek thing of importance. The Bacchanalian feast of Dionysus, the blue, bisexual, gender fluid god. It's how it was. This was not, this all serves to further demonize and bury and discourage the myths that show really beautifully. It's unfortunate Terence McKenna isn't alive to see this, because I think I've done a pretty bad job tonight of trying to lay out all of the bits and pieces in a coherent way in order to paint the picture I was going for. At least I could have done better. But that's the general gist of it. The bulletin point of this presentation is that the reality that the suns are a living thing, that we get our light and consciousness and soul, S-O-L plus you, is your individual soul, right? The big soul, S-O-L, add you, and then you have the individual soul. That this was known universally by the ancients. Man had the truth, wandering along in the darkness of superstition and shadow. He found error and inculcated it as his belief system. And the mystery traditions spread around the world, corrupted and diluted, and became Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, all of this stuff. Long story short, the last thing they want, I think, is for the sleepwalking masses, even less than the religious people. There's no prying them from their delusions and awakening them to the truth. The overwhelming majority of them are without hope in that regard. But the sleepwalking masses that are, uncertain or neutral or atheist or agnostic, the ability, like Morals and Dogma, for example, this book, the way that it spans throughout history and ties all these things together and shows that at one point, every single culture on the planet, from the Druids to the Roman, the Greeks, ancient Greeks, to the Incas, everywhere, had at least some fundamental outline of the truth of how the universe works, what our role in it is. It's not even difficult, And so this whole rant started out with the recognition of Baal and how the conspiracy theorists are like, you got to watch out for these Baal worshipers. They sacrifice, humans, and it's like, okay, yeah, that sounds like a really evil god. So hold on, wait. You have to sacrifice 3 times 3 people, 3 times 3 months, so 9 people every 9 months. And your God sends billions of people to hell for all of eternity to be tortured endlessly, just for lack of belief. That's better. That's... And so, what it is, and what I was saying in the secret stream today is that I suspect some of these people to be plants, really, because they're trying to scare people away from the recognition that there was a universal truth and that science is starting to become totally and completely congruent with it. The panpsychic idea that there is a fundamental intelligence that just, is the fabric of reality. Like the Trinity is space, time, and consciousness, some fundamental baseline awareness. The idea that we get our knowledge on the rays of the sun has been I can't say confirmed exactly, but there have been observations of microtubules absorbing light into the brain. So we're at the precipice, at least, of being able to confirm that. And then another wild one is that anesthetics do not turn off the consciousness at the chemical level. They backspin electrons. And that's where your consciousness is turned off at the level of the electron. Here's the thing. Why is it possible to fire it back up then? That is a big deal that we have arrived at this understanding. And it's funny because Stuart Hameroff, who has been working with Penrose on this orc theory, is actually an anesthesiologist. And he knows the import of what they have figured out, what they've been observing. But he has to be careful because they are mainstream scientists. And they can't jump to conclusions. They can talk a little bit about inferences, but it's touchy if you want to maintain your credibility, and you're flirting with paradigm shifting ideas. We think that Galileo, that we're beyond that, but if you echo his madness, you may suffer his fate. Still to this day, in terms of being ostracized and alienated and shunned and ridiculed. And anyways, what I'm getting at is if you follow him on Twitter, you can see the exuberance behind the fact that he knows what this stuff implies, but he can't really say it explicitly. A lot of these guys that are in this position right now are doing this. Rupert Sheldrake, of all of them, seems to be the most brave with a complete, like, I don't give a fuck attitude, you know? I mean, he's been saying whatever he thinks regardless, and selling enough books that I guess it doesn't matter to him. But you'll notice that Michael Levin, he's just starting to say things like he thinks synchronicity is signs that we live in a higher order of intelligence of some kind, publicly, and kind of admitting that he's basically panpsychist. But you know what I mean? They're still very obviously treading carefully. This is not anything new either. I mean, all the way back to Carl Jung, the strictures imposed by the parameters of the paradigm on our thinkers and scientists. Hindsight being 2020, it's really obvious how much it has hindered the development of a proper and holistic understanding of the universe that we live in. And that is being remedied. Just trying to catch up in the chat a little bit, you guys. We got about 15 more minutes, and then I'm going to eat some dinner so that I can do my, hey, wow, there's a decent number of people over here. The voice chat for patrons only. Please do join the Patreon. We are demonetized, and it is difficult for me to justify putting a lot of time into YouTube if I don't get paid for it. And unbelievably, I'm not going to throw them under the bus completely yet, but I may be about to expose one of my affiliate companies is not paying me. It's been like 8 months, and that's a big deal. So I might be having to do a smear campaign soon. It only seems fair, right? All right, sorry guys, I have 2 chats to catch up with. I don't want to miss. If you have any questions or anything, feel free. If anything I said didn't make sense to you and you would like some explanation, what book do I recommend to start with Crowley? It's not really entire books so much as like... all right, well, no, that's not exactly true. The book 4 on magick is mostly about yoga, actually. Most people don't know this, but Crowley actually introduced yoga to the West in a book called The 8 Limbs of Yoga, Yoga for Yellow Bellies, I think it was called. And it was actually just a transcript of a talk that he gave at like Royal College London a long-ass time ago. And he actually did go and with Alan Bennett and study with like the last of the living ancient style yogis, you know. This yoga that like New Age housewives practice has got nothing to do with the original yogic practices of the Himalayan highlands. And that's fine. I'm not necessarily knocking it for what it is. I'm just saying it's not that. So anyways, the introduction to that is excellent, and then also Magick in Theory and Practice is excellent, 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 excellent. And then the certain parts of the Equinox are good, but it's a huge, huge, huge bunch of publications, so I can't remember which volumes I used to have. The Gems from the Equinox is worth having for sure. And then my favorite is probably the Book of Lies, so falsely called the wanderings of the one thought of Perturabo, which is in itself untrue, also called breaks. It is a naughty, like the universe, it is a naughty knot of naughty knots or something like that. But anyways, if you're going to read the Book of Lies, you have to be willing to study the Kabbalah. And, you know, when you come across words like nefesh and ruach and these other terms from Yetzirah, you know, the Atzilut, all these terms from Hebrew mysticism, you have to take the time to look them up. Otherwise, the book will make no sense to you. And another thing I've always really liked about that book is that you can read it and then put it down for 6 months and then pick it up again. And if you have truly planted the seeds of initiation and watered them with the rays of the sun, the next time you read the book, the next time you pick up the book, the whole new level of stuff will be available to you to understand. Check in with the chat again. By the way, you guys, we are closing booking for the retreat in September in about 15 days. So if you would like to come, you have to sign up because we're renting, you know, a place based on how many people are coming. And so I can't make changes after a certain point. So if you've been on the fence about that, send me an email because, and there's going to be quite a few of us in, not compared to like these commercial retreats, but I think so far we're up to like 5 people or something like that for September. What's up, Emperor's Taichu? Magic is real. You just have to believe and create a hocus pocus spell to manifest and conjure your will, for is above, so below, is within, so without. Yeah, kind of. I mean, I find that to be a little bit oversimplistic. Magic is real, but it doesn't always work. And I think one of the big problems with manifestation coaches is that they like to convince people that you can just think of stuff like in the movie The Secret, and the red bike rolls up the driveway when the person thinks about it. It's not like that. It's obviously not like that. And, you know, the human ability to stare the sun directly in the face without noticing that it's there is astonishing. And what I mean by that is the obvious truth about things. I did have a period in my life where the apparent manifestations of my will were astonishing, but I had been focused solely on this objective for my entire life, you know. And I think that what you were doing with that kind of focus is, you know, you were consolidating electromagnetic energy on a certain reality, and it generally, I don't care how powerful you are, or, you know, I don't know what you mean by spells, but that's definitely not my way. You know, to focus the mind entirely and completely on this single solitary objective. And here's the thing, our world is supposed to be engineered around that. Everyone should know that that is how you live your life. You should be brought into this world with parents and schools, if there's going to be schools still, if that's even necessary, that have as their fundamental aim and purpose to help you realize your fundamental true will, so that every breath and every deed, every thought is uninterrupted focus on this singular objective. If this is how the world was run, there would be no losers. And the dissonance that I had to process from my parents, people around me, society, culture, you know, even as iconoclastic as I guess I kind of tend to be, you know, if that word actually means, you know, like not concerned with herd conformity, it still was enough to create quite a lot of dissonance. And so, yeah, I mean, And speaking, we've been talking a little bit about Aleister Crowley tonight, and in the 1890s, he tried to petition the British government to allow children to choose their own studies. Why do you think they were telling people he was the most dangerous man and the most evil man in the world? That's what he was telling them to do. Oh no, Satan. And the reality is that, you guys know why it is that we do not do that in our society. People that are confident, self-assured, that know their purpose, once you have found that purpose, nothing can derail you from it. Nothing. Trust me. I have been single track minded my entire life, at least in terms of like the general meaning of why I'm here and what I do. It has never really fluctuated, and it won't. And that's the thing, that they can't have. They have to have people that are suffering from a crisis of purpose, people that have no star in sight. Because the illuminated cannot be governed, they will not tolerate being governed. That's what we are and how we're used. Let's see. Yeah, somebody in the comments said, the true definition of magic is when our will is in alignment with the will of our universe. That's absolutely factual, and the fact that the average view duration is 444, which is the number that reflects that statement that he made. It's funny, I just saw the question. What is this? Are you going to bless us with some music tonight? Yeah, you know what? I was thinking about that because I did this tribute to Jerry the other night, and I ate 150 milligrams or so of THC, which is way too much. But it didn't label on the bag. It had a label on the website, and I'm still not quite right because I haven't consumed any THC in like 5 years, and before that, no edibles for like 7 years. So I was just not accustomed to it, and I ate 5 of them in Pisac the other night. Nothing happened. I might have like had a little bit of like, I don't know, nothing substantial. So I ate 6, and I turned on my camera and started playing the guitar, and man, when I went back and watched the replay, I was like strumming an entire beat behind the changes, playing like I would have a musical phrase enter my mind because I'm improvising entirely, and then it would come out like a full 2 beats after it was supposed to be played, and the singing was bad, and it was like those edibles completely ruined me. I left it up for a couple days because there were some decent parts, but I ended up taking it down. I couldn't handle it. But I might actually play a little bit later tonight. So you guys can join me for that. If you're not a patron, go become a patron so that I can let you into the voice chat at 8 o'clock, which means I have about 7 minutes. If you guys have questions or subjects you want to throw at me, I kind of got derailed a little bit. Tonight I had more of a plan, but these things are so full of confluence and tributaries that it's very easy to get sidetracked. So another illustration that I think really bears mentioning, I guess. I know a lot of you guys, if you follow me in any context, if I start talking about all the reasons why it's obvious that Jesus is an allegory for the Son, like how plainly they spelled all that out in the Bible. And it hit me the other day that they've been staring into the sun without realizing it so long that it has burned out their retinas and made them go blind. Pretty wild, right? That brings us back to this thing that I always like to mention. I don't know who the author of this is, except that there are several philosophers. Actually, it goes all the way back to Empedocles. He said it in a different way. No. Sorry, that's actually the quote that's attributed to Nietzsche, that the God is an infinite circle whose circumference is everywhere and center nowhere, or center is everywhere and circumference nowhere. That's actually Empedocles, not Nietzsche. But that's not what I was thinking of. It's this, all of it is metaphor. So the thing is, even though Jesus is just an allegory for the sun, it doesn't stop it from burning out your retinas if you stare into the allegory too long. It's wild. It's wild shit. This is an expression of the holographic nature of the universe. You know? It's also one of the reasons why I always say that, you know, people that are apologists for religion don't understand that it's not people misconstruing and misapplying the thing. It's the thing. Nothing can do anything that is not in its fundamental nature. And this does not apply to physical tools. I'm talking about ideologies, thought forms. You know, this is a different level of thing that runs on the minds and the biocomputer of the individual, just like a software in a computer, an app. I guess we don't have software anymore. Man, I'm old. All right, guys. So I have to get some food, jump over to my other chat. If you're interested and I have energy for it, I may play some music, since it sounds like we have a few requests. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe. One or two, maybe. I mean, it depends on if people want to share rooms or not. We can work it out. But no more than 5 more people in September. We can have a few more in the last 2 weeks of August. And that's that for that. And then please hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron. Access to 5 years of patron-only premium content of all kinds, and ongoing forbidden knowledge streams, and then also voice chats, usually Monday night at 8, but we have some people that are in different time zones, so every once in a while I do one on Saturday, because there aren't many of those people, but they are there, and so those are always wonderful too, and there's a completely different cast of characters. So colloidal gold, empty stomach every morning, San Pedro on Sunday, as high altitude as you can possibly get. Do not stare directly into it, but close your eyes and face the sun. Head full of San Pedro, colloidal gold, fast all day. Thank me later. Good night.